Hey guys, so we're going to chat a little bit today about some more rules of exponents that we should know. And we're going to start with just a little review looking at where we were in class over the last couple of days. And so let's start that conversation right now with a question that has some coefficients in it, because I think coefficients were giving us a little bit of a hard time previously. So let's get some coefficients involved here. We're going to look at a question that looks like, let's go with 16 x squared y to the third over 8 x to the fifth y. And so what I really want us to do here, I don't want us to be overly stressed out by these coefficients. What I'd like us to do is really treat this like three separate questions. So we're going to kind of see this question as a fraction that needs to be simplified right there, 16 over 8. And then we're going to deal with our x's, and then we can deal with our y's. So we'll do that in three separate steps here. We're going to start with 16 over 8, and both of those numbers are divisible by 8. So 8 goes into 16 twice, and it goes into 8 just once. So over here in my simplified answer, I'm going to get a 2 on top and a 1 on bottom. When we start looking at x's, I have 2 x's right here and 5 x's down here. So these 2 are going to go away, and they'll take 2 of these with them. It'll leave me with 3 x's that need to be on the bottom of my fraction. And then finally with my y's, we've got 3 y's on the top and 1 y on the bottom. And so this 1 y will go cancel one of the 3 out and leave us with 2 more that are on the top. The 1 is not really necessary in our answer since there's something else on the bottom holding that fraction. So we have 2y squared over x cubed. And that would be the answer to that question. Let's look at one more with coefficients that you can take a look at yourself. And so let's take a look here at 15 x to the third, y to the third, x to the fifth, over 5 x squared y cubed squared. Go ahead and simplify that. That's going to take all the rules that we've come up with so far. Alrighty, so let's first start by simplifying on the bottom here, because the top's, well, let's start on the top. We've got 15, that's not really going anywhere right now. And we've got an x cubed and an x to the fifth, which is a total of 8 x's on top. And we still have got 3 y's. And then let's go to the bottom. And so this squared, we have to square 5. That means 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. We have to square x squared. That means x squared times x squared. And x squared times x squared is x to the fourth. And we have to square y cubed. That means y cubed times y cubed. So that's y and y for a total of y to the sixth power. Now we're going to simplify our fractions here. So let's start by simplifying. 15 over 25, and the number 5 goes into both of those. It goes 3 times into that and 5 times into that. So we'll get a 3 over 5 in our answer. We've got 8 x's on the top and 4 on the bottom. So all 4 of these will cancel 4 of those, and it'll leave 4 behind. And we've got 3 y's that will cancel out 3 of those 6 and leave 3 behind on the bottom. And that will be our final answer, 3x to the fourth over 5y to the third power. Alrighty, so let's get on to some new content. What was the purpose of this video tonight? And the purpose was to take a look at some exponents like 3 to the negative second power. These negative exponents. Take a look at some negative exponents and start to understand what a negative exponent does. To do this, we're going to start with a pattern that we are very familiar with. So we're going to go, we'll start with these numbers right here. And let's start with the easiest one of them all. 3 to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. 3 to the first power is 3. When I multiply by 3 again, I get 9. When I multiply by 3 again, I get 27. It's pretty easy to go this direction in that pattern. multiply by 3, multiply by 3, multiply by 3. To go backwards in this pattern, we have to do the opposite of multiply by 3, which is divide by 3. Divide by 3, and divide by 3. So I want to keep going in this pattern. And the next exponent I'll get to in this pattern is negative 1. And if I have to divide by 3, well, what's 1 divided by 3? Well, it's a fraction, 1 over 3. When we go to 3 to the negative second power, we're going to divide by 3 again. And we're going to get 1 over 9. And what we're going to start to see is there's a relationship here. These are kind of like cousins. The positive exponent, 3 squared, is very similar to the negative exponent, except that instead of its answer being a whole number, it becomes a fraction. The number, instead of being a numerator, becomes a denominator. And that's because the negative exponents don't actually mean anything having to do with negative. What they really mean is division. So just like a positive exponent is repeated multiplication, a negative exponent represents repeated division. And so we're going to use that to our advantage to answer a couple of questions here. And that's kind of the why of how negative exponents work. But where we're really going to start to see them is in some of those same kind of questions we were looking at before. Something like 2x to the 5th, y to the 3rd, x to the negative 2, let's say. So basically, what we're going to, the only thing that's different in this question is this guy right here. And that just means that instead of multiplying by x twice, we're actually going to divide by it twice. And so when we rewrite this expression, instead of writing x to the negative 2, we're just going to write it on the bottom of the fraction. We're going to say divide by those two x's. Instead of multiplying by them, we're dividing by them because the exponent is negative. And now we're going to simplify this the same way we've been doing other expressions over the last several days. So I've got two x's on the bottom, and those two x's can take away 2 of those 5, leaving behind 3. And we'll end up with 2x cubed y cubed. And the same idea will happen if we see something like x to the 3rd, y to the 5th, over x to the negative 4th. Well, I'm already dividing this thing. It's already in the denominator of my fraction. So the way that we deal with the negative here is we actually move it back to the top. We undivide it. Essentially, we're dividing and dividing. And we're going to end up with x cubed y to the 5th. And in order for this to no longer be a negative exponent, it moves to the top and becomes x to the 4th. It becomes multiplication again. And so if we were going to kind of clean this up a little bit, we get x to the 7th. There's 7 total x's, and y to the 5th. And that can be a little bit confusing, but the take-home message is actually not too complicated, and it looks like this. If you have a negative exponent, like we do right here, it needs to move either from the denominator to the numerator, or from the numerator to the denominator, so that it will no longer have a negative exponent. If this guy right here is negative, when we move him up, he gets a positive exponent, and then we know how to handle him. In essence, what we're really doing is we're getting rid of all of our negative exponents, and then we're worrying about trying to simplify. But first, we got to get rid of those negatives. So I want you to try one right now, see how it goes. That is a to the 5th, b to the 3rd, x to the 3rd, over a to the 4th, b to the negative 4th, and x to the negative 1st power. Think about that. Think about what needs to stay where it is and what needs to move to become a positive exponent, and then we will chat about it. Go for it. Alrighty, so I'm just going to identify here my negative exponents. There's one here and there's one here. And both of those negative exponents have to move. Everything else is going to stay right where it is. So let's rewrite some stuff. A to the 5th is staying right where it was. B to the 3rd is staying right where it was. X to the 3rd is staying right where it was. And a to the 4th is staying right where it was. There's no need for it to move because it's already a positive exponent. The only things that need to move here, b to the negative 4th needs to come up to become b to the 4th. And x to the negative 1 needs to come up to become x to the 1. And at this point, all that's left to do is to clean this up and push things together however we need to. So we've got 4 A's on the bottom and 5 on top. Well, those 4 will cancel out 4 of those 5 and leave us with 1 A behind, A. We've got 3 B's and 4 B's for a total of 7 B's. And we've got 3 X's and 1 X for a total of 4 X's. And that is going to be how we simplify that expression. Let's try another one here. Just do some examples here, give you a chance to practice. We're going to hit pause as soon as we get this question written down. We're looking at 15 x to the third y to the negative fourth over 25 x to the negative fifth y to the negative seventh. Take a moment and go ahead and try to simplify that. Alrighty, so let's start by moving some things around. I've got a negative exponent and a negative exponent and a negative exponent, and those have to move. But let's start with what's staying still. The 15 is going to stay where it was because it does not have a negative exponent. The x cubed is going to stay where it is because it doesn't have a negative exponent. And the 25 is going to stay right where it is because it doesn't have a negative exponent. The rest of these things need to move. Y to the negative fourth is going to move down to become y4. X to the negative fifth is going to move up to become x to the fifth, and y to the negative seventh is going to come up to become y to the positive seventh. All of my negative exponents moved. The ones that were on the bottom moved to the top, and the ones that were on the top moved to the bottom. And in so doing so, when they did that, the exponents became positive, and I'm going to be able to deal with them a little bit easier now. So I've got 15 over 25. Well, those are both divisible by 5. That's going to give me 3 over 5. I've got 3 x's and 5 more x's on top. That's a total of 8 x's up top. And then this y7 here and this y4, I'm going to cancel out 4 of them. There will be 3 left, and those 3 are all going to be up top. So my final answer will be 3x to the 8th y to the 3rd over, ooh, that's a terrible 5. Let's see if I can fix that 5 over 5. Awesome. All right, very last question. I know this video is getting a little long here. So it's my last question for you before we move forward. And again, I want you to try this on your own. We've got 3x squared y to the negative third squared over 18x to the 5th power. Go for it. Alrighty, so we're going to square this guy. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. We're going to square this guy. X squared, that's a total of x to the 4th. And we're going to square this guy. So y to the negative third and y to the negative third is y to the negative 6th. And that's going to be over 18x to the 5th. At this point, before I go any further, I need to move my negative exponents. I only have 1 here. So it's going to be pretty easy to move. It's right here, and it needs to move down. It's going to give me 9x to the 4th. Those things are staying. 18x to the 5th, that is staying. And y to the 6th has moved to the bottom. Last thing that I can simplify in this question is the coefficients. 9 and 18 are both divisible by 9, and I get 1 over 2. So at the end, I have 1x to the 4th, or just x to the 4th, over 2x to the 5th, and y to the 6th. Hope that wasn't too confusing for you. We are certainly going to continue to talk about this, especially those of you that struggled with this. We will talk a lot about this in class tomorrow, rather on Thursday, for those of you that are watching a day early. And just hang back for a minute and give me some feedback at the end of this video, and then I'll see you guys when I see you. All right, have a good night.